Hey y'all, 1776 Duck here, and I'm with my good buddy, Ken Hackathorn. Ken, how are you today?
Great day.
It is a pretty day. We're up in Idaho, which I'd never been to before, and I'm telling you, I don't know if I want to leave.
Well, I suspicion that when December rolls around, you might change your tune a little bit.
Yeah, I think the snow, or even just the cold in general, will probably send me, with my tail between my legs back to North
And you'll
Carolina.
have both, so lots of both. So.
Well, I appreciate you having me out at your place. We've been doing some shooting. This is going to be the first in a series of videos with Mr. Hackathorn, and I think people will enjoy it. A lot of folks my age are not quite as familiar with you as I am, so I think this will be a good opportunity to kind of introduce you to kind of the next generation, if you get what I'm saying.
Well, I'm, a classic boomer, born in 1946, so I was actually a first-year boomer. And even though social media-wise, I've been kind of labeled as a FUD, and that's okay because one thing FUDs have over, let's say, your generation is something called experience.
That's right, you do.
So I've been around through, shall we say, the beginning of what we'll call the combat 1911 era,
Right.
which really kicked off initially like in the 60s, but it was kind of, believe it or not, kind of California located.
Oh, of course.
Cooper started the whole thing with the Southwest, what was originally a Southwest Combat Pistol League, later renamed the Southwest Pistol League. But he kind of launched this whole practical shooting thing, and of course the 1911 was core to his approach.
Sure.
So as time went on, I mean, I was a big follower, and I was in high school. I was in study hall. I was reading Guns and Ammo magazine and Cooper stuff. So I've always been somewhat interested, involved in it. And like in 1974, I wrote Jeff Cooper. He had a column in Guns and Ammo called Cooper on Handguns, and I wrote care of Guns and Ammo, Colonel Jeff Cooper, a letter and said, how does someone learn about this practical shooting? And to my surprise, like maybe a couple weeks later, I get a letter back saying, contact Dan Predovich, Deputy Larimer County Sheriff's Office. I'm teaching a pistol class there. I don't know, it was in May or something, May of 74. Come take the class and you'll learn. And I remember at the time I reached out to a couple of my other buddies from the sheriff's office, and we took vacation.
Oh.
And we drove. I took my wife and my baby daughter, and she had an aunt that lived in Denver, so I dropped her off and I drove up to Larimer County. And anyway, took the class and literally it made a lot of good friends I've known for a long time. Some of them aren't around anymore, but it kind of launched me, and I came away from that class, and I'd been around shooting and certainly law enforcement training, which was, pretty pitiful back then. And what I learned from Cooper, I was like a born again Christian.
Oh, I bet.
Man, I was an evangelist. I want to use this. You got it. This is the way to go. So it kind of launched me on this trip down the road. So I got in. I was a founding member of IPSC,
right,
which later evolved in USPSA. A founding member of IDPA.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was the guy that came up with the concept and the idea of 3-gun.
Oh, yeah.
And it was executed by Soldier of Fortune in their.
Right.
And by the way, but Colonel Bob Brown, the guy who was the editor and the guy behind Soldier of Fortune, really deserves the credit because he's the guy that put the money up to make it happen. But anyway, so I've been around this for a while, and I've seen. We talked about it, and some of the stuff we shot yesterday and stuff is we went through generations of what a practical 1911 is. Now we finally have moved into the 21st century, and we have, in many ways, similar designs, but we've also got other guns that are now in the race.
Right,
For
of
example,
course.
the striker-fired guns and a lot of that. And we saw the growth that started in the 90s when Chip McCormick and Virgil Tripp, and they brainstormed what they thought would be a high cap, double cap, which we now know as the 2011.
Right.
And of course, that has grown dramatically to the point where, for example, the company you work for offers now their version of a 2011. It's a huge market. And you guys did something that is just did it. I mean, launched it on 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And you went back to where that started, the original STI or the original thing was a 45.
Right. Yep. The
And you
Alchemy.
guys just went back because it evolved into 9mm. And everybody now knows most people shooting 2011s or 9s. And with classic, we'll talk staccato kind of is capitalized on
Right.
that. But everybody else makes a 9. You guys, I think, shall we say, cracked some ice. I think
I
so.
love that
Interesting to see
gun.
the follow up on this, by
Yep.
the way. But anyway, you've got an interesting gun here, which I know is one of your favorites. You brought it
Oh,
out.
absolutely.
We shot it yesterday. I've shot a few of these things over
I'm
the years.
sure.
And this was a gun in about, I'm going to say, let's say 1980 time frame. The race gun, shall we say, a comp guns popped onto the market. And what competitors all wanted is a way to shoot faster and with less recoil and quicker recovery. And there were another one. You remember Jimmy Clark brought out the pin gun. It was
Yep.
just a weight. It was a bull barrel,
Sure.
cone barrel with a weight out here.
Yep.
But again, it retarded the unlocking and guns. And a lot of people realize, well, you look at a Thompson submachine gun and a Cutch compensator, and you realize they work.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
somebody, well, let's make compensators. And a lot of people got into the market, but the guy who killed it was Bill Wilson
Oh, absolutely.
with the LE comp.
I won't. I. This is one of my prized possessions. This LE comp. It's one of the best shooting 45s I've ever shot. I mean, I've got some pretty cool 45s, and I've got some guns that shoot, you know, that are a little bit more refined. And that's another thing too. You know, you break this gun open and you think, man, did they use a did they use it? Yeah. I mean, it's rough, but it
that's
works.
the way guns were made.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. They didn't have CNC machinery back then.
Absolutely, no, you're exactly right. And so it is impressive to see what could be done, you know, with just the human hand. And the LE comp, to me, first of all, I think, especially in a two-tone variety with Packmeyers, and that, you know, 3-hole Vodecki trigger, a real live Bomar ring hammer. I mean, that right there is one of the just sexiest guns I've ever seen. But, you know, shooting it, I used to never be into the comps. I used to think that was a dumb thing, just shoot it the way Browning, you know, wanted you to, until I got an LE comp. And I originally got this just to have another kind of book in the library, if you will. You know, I've talked to you about this. I'm trying to develop a library of custom guns. So I really just wanted this as, you know, this was kind of what Bill Wilson was known for in the 80s. I want that to, you know, put in the library. And then I shot it and I went, holy crap.
Yeah.
And I shot it some more, and I shot it some more, and I shoot this gun actually about every time I go to the range. I take it with me.
Yeah, and you can see why they're popular. And a lot of things. There's a couple of things that are at work here. One of course, the design's all used kind of a cone barrel, bushing with cone barrel. So you've added a lot of weight just there.
Yep.
Then you got the comp, and of course, then the real trick, that most people don't get, is everybody thinks that the port here and the jet effect is what keeps the gun down. And the whole goal, remember, is to slow down the unlocking.
Right.
That's how you reduce the recoil impulse. And a lot of people today are all about tuning springs to the guns. And the recoil spring, as far as the rearward movement, it really isn't that important.
Right.
Okay. The recoil spring force chambering and put a new gun into the round in the battery is important. Now, if they're oversprung, you can actually get most of it.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
The point is, so they changed front balance-wise is more to the front of the gun. But what people don't realize, and Bill figured this out real quick, was that if you notice this front, if you look in the port, this is actually a baffle. The hole's a little oversized. It's a little bit bigger than a 45 bullet. But then you've got like a flange all around, which is like a baffle. So you can imagine when this gun fires, as it comes out, all this gas is behind the bullet. When they come out, just about they expand into the port. You get an expansion chamber, but the main thing about that is not the expansion chamber, is the gas effect is hitting that baffle, driving the comp forward and the barrel forward. So what it does is, and this happens in milliseconds, but where the gun would otherwise be already starting to move back and unlock, is pushing it forward, the barrel forward, staying in the battery. Cool. And that's the secret to this baffle. Everybody says port side. Yeah, it really, now the 45 doesn't have, not a high pressure round, so it doesn't have a lot of jet effect.
Sure.
As you remember, not long after this, remember LE stands for Latham Enos, who were some of the, well, Rob Latham is the greatest pistol shooter that's ever lived, but they kind of said, and that's what the gun was named after them. Bill marketed it as the LE comp. It was everybody was in competition. This is the gun they wanted.
Oh yeah.
And then when I went to 38 Super, you took your chamber pressure, went, you know, it was double what this is. Almost. Well, not double, it's a third more. But the point of it is now you have a real jet effect, but you still have the baffle effect. You're hitting it with more pressure and more gas. So those things are really incredible to shoot. But this was a popular gun for well over a decade. And they got fancier. You know, they started at, you remember Jerry Barnhart was the first guy to use a red dot on a pistol. And my experience has been that most great shooters have exceptional vision. That's one of the things. They have a lot of skills, dexterity, you know, hand-eye coordination, a lot of things working for them. But most of them that I've ever known have an incredible vision. I mean, 2015, some of them 2010 vision. And of course, everybody thinks whatever your vision is normal. That's what everybody else has. Well, really, a person with 2010 vision can literally, typically watch the bullet go through the target.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
2010 vision. I had 2015 back in the day. And of course, what they consider is kind of the normal's 2020. Difference between 2020 and 2015 is pretty dramatic. Back when I still had good vision, I could 25 yards, I could shoot the target, and I could call every shot on the target. Or I could see the bullet hole. Can't do that anymore. But the point is, Jerry is one of the few really great championship shooters that didn't have good vision. He wore glasses. His eyesight wasn't particularly good. So he's the one that came to the idea of putting a red dot on. First guy to do it. And the red dots, he used a Tasco Pro Point, and of course they wouldn't take the shock of the gun, so they tapped to the frame. They nailed them to the frame, to the dust cover, and of course that has went on now where red dots, particularly in the competition world, and to the guys who shoot a lot and have learned to master them, are now pretty much the norm.
Right.
But this gun, in many ways, was a major trendsetter. And what's kind of interesting, this gun is like literally this design concept is 40 years old now.
Right.
Interestingly enough, comps are now coming back.
I know.
And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I always tell people one thing about when I was 25 years old or 26, I didn't know what I didn't know. That's normal. Now, the difference is in some ways, my observation, it's just my opinion, is when I was that age, you kind of knew you didn't know what you didn't know. Your generation's a little different. Not only do they not know what they don't know, but they're pretty arrogant about it.
That's right.
It's unfortunate. But, you know, people say, well, you're bashing on Z-Gens. Well, okay, get over it. You know, turn the video off if you don't like to hear it. Now, the kicker is that, but they're coming back.
Yeah.
And, for example, they just introduced a new pistol, one of their X9s. This is mine. And if you'll notice, it's got a port on it. And by the way, if you look, pretty darn similar. And you shot this gun yesterday.
Yeah, it shoots really good.
It is impressive.
And I think the thing that shocked me the most about this was how similar that comp is to the original
If
LE
you really
comp.
look at it,
I mean,
it's the same design.
It's exact same design. There is that
there's a little
port there.
added port.
Yep.
But again, 9mm, much higher pressure cartridge.
Sure.
So you've got the pressure working for you. And it, by the way, it uses a just like this one, a cone barrel design, bushless design, and the comps on there. And I remember when I let you shoot it, you shot it and you were like, whoa.
Yeah, no.
Not what you expected.
True. Well, and the thing, you kind of set me up for that too, because I shot the 4-inch gun, comp.
The standard
X9. And then I shot that. And I'll be honest, in a shorter barrel, that's a 3.5 inch, right?
3.5 inch.
3.5 inch with the comp. In the shorter barrel, I actually think it shoots better.
Oh, it's dramatically better.
And, you know, that I was really happy to see when Wilson came out with that, because it kind of, you know, to me, you know, return to the roots kind of deal. And I do want to go back to the LE real quick. And you made a comment, because I asked you if you ever had one. You said no. But the comment you made to me about it, what always cracked me up about it being so good, you know, such a good shooting gun, you didn't want to get spoiled on it.
Right.
And it really, I mean, it truly is a pretty exceptional gun. The recoil impulse is really unique. I'll tell you one thing I was not prepared for: the loudness.
Yeah. Everything is a trade-off.
Yeah.
I tell people, compensators do work.
Yes.
But there's a trade-off. They're much more blasty.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you are shooting a low light, you get a dramatic more amount of muzzle signature. Now people say, well, that's not a problem. If you never shoot in the dark, you're right. It's not a problem. And if it's a range gun or a game gun or whatever, I mean, and people would say, well, Hackathorn, he's a FUD and he's out of touch and whatever, and he doesn't like lights on pistols. And by the way, I don't care. You can put a aircraft landing light in your gun. I don't care. I don't use them because 20 plus years ago, we figured out lights on guns are not a good idea.
Sure.
But most people don't, because they follow the social media world. They've never really looked into it or understood what it's about. They're not what everybody thinks they are. But of course, everything you see has got a light on it. Everybody thinks, well, I got to have one. If you're a cool
Right.
kid, you get a light in your gun. Well, go ahead, put whatever you want. And same thing. People ask me about red dot lights. As you saw, I've got a bunch of them. I shoot them. I'm
Yeah,
okay
you
with
shoot
red
well
dots.
with them.
If you're willing to put the time and
Right.
rounds down range to learn to use them effectively, you will shoot better with a red
Sure,
dot. No
absolutely.
question about it. Problem is, most people don't. They just put it on the gun and think, okay, I'm going to be a better shot. No, you won't. It doesn't. It's not going to help.
You have to practice with
Yeah.
them.
So when people say you need a red dot on your gun, no, it's not a necessity. If you want one and you want to learn how to use it, and that
Sure.
means shooting a lot, cool. But so people are shocked when I say, but compensators,
Yeah.
they can't. They say, well, Hackathorn, we thought you'd be down them. No. Is it a necessity?
Yeah.
No. Is it pretty cool? And when you shoot them, everybody shot this gun. When they shoot it, other guys like, wow, and they shoot it and they go, wow. So,
It's pretty sweet.
and this was the same thing. I thought, and I shot my buddies' guns. A lot of guys shooting USPSA. That was the big thing. And I shot them, and no question, it was pretty cool. It did what it's supposed to. But I thought, I'm in the world of practical firearms training, not
Sure.
competition training. Yep. So if I get myself hooked on this, I'll be spoiled.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
going to stick to standard 5-inch configuration gun.
Hey, y'all, sorry about that. We had some audio issues, some technical difficulties. The camera overheated, so we now have it in the shade, and you might actually experience better audio because I actually hooked his mic up. So we are good to go there, and with that, I'm going to circle back around. Last thing for you on the LE Comp. When I was reading Bill Wilson's book, The Combat Auto, good book, you should grab it if you don't have it. I noticed he kind of talked about the LE Comp as almost a street / comp gun, and I think it's interesting now. We have this new comp gun, which I think is primarily a street gun. So, like, what are your thoughts on like a comp gun as a street gun, as a fighting gun? Because that's kind of what we focus on as a custom fighting 45. So, what is your thoughts on that as a fighting gun?
Well, it's interesting when this gun came out, Latham, Etham, LE Comp. Virtually, people's attitude is just, what do you want for whatever Rob Latham uses? And the demand for this gun would just overwhelm Wilson Combat.
Sure.
I mean, did he talk about the thought of making a shorter slide and what we'll call more of a carry comp? They couldn't keep up with this gun. This is what people wanted. Whatever Rob Latham wants now. And as a result, some of the other people, most notably was a well-known at the time and a really, really good pistol smith, 1911 guy by the name of oh crap, I'm having a Joe Biden. Anyway, the guy in Ohio, it would come to me, but anyway, he actually made carry comps where he cut the slides, kind of like the old Bobcats.
Oh, okay.
Put the cone barrel. So what you had is a gun that was like a 5-inch length with a comp.
Okay.
On the end.
Yeah.
So it was called the carry comp. A lot of people, Steve Nastoff, by the way.
Oh,
Steve
Nastoff, yeah, absolutely.
Superb pistol smith. And those guns were incredibly popular. Basically, you had a 5-inch length gun. You could put it in your regular 5-inch holster, but you had a compensator. Some other people did it. I think Bill may have done some, but they were so overwhelmed with this configuration it sold. That's what everybody wanted. So he never really got to address it. By the time that carry comp concept kind of came on, I'll be honest with you, compensators were real popular for about a decade. Probably by the mid-90s, they were starting to, except for the hardcore competition, USPS,
Sure.
They really kind of faded. Like everything does. Fads come and go. Like right now, we know what's popular. Doesn't mean it'll be popular 5-10 years from now, because life is about change, whether we like it or not.
Sure.
So, and then the world evolved back to, hey, we just want basic real world carry guns, and the comps kind of faded off the table to the point where a lot of people that own these guns sent them back to Wilson, had the comp cut off, and just used the cone barrel. The front sight was moved back on top of the slide, and they went, and that was really in the IDPA era. IDPA is like 1996 or so, and they had the box rule. Your gun.
Oh,
and
right,
one of
right.
the things that was not permitted was ports or comps
Oh, okay.
in their rules, because they want to get back to just what they call street guns or real world guns. So they kind of went through cycle, but clearly this gun, the Wilson Combat LE, was the standard by which they were all judged. And by the way, in my opinion, probably the best.
Now, real quickly, was this the first comp gun, or were there other comp guns that were before
The
it?
first guy, there was a guy early on that first brought, his name was Cellini, and he had a comp which looked a lot like similar to a cuts compensator.
Oh,
And it
okay.
was basically you just screwed it onto the barrel. And so it wasn't a cone barrel or anything. And that, of course, as soon as the top competitors are always looking for an edge. And when the Cellini comp, everybody's, oh, you got to have one of his comps. Well, I shot it, and it was terribly blasty, and I didn't think it did all that much because he didn't really utilize the expansion chamber /
Oh,
baffle
right.
well. And then you remember there was a period like Ray Chapman used a combat special, and Ray Chapman was one of the greats in the competition shooting world, with a 6-inch Barstow barrel that they literally hacksawed 2 slots in.
Yep.
And the reason what it was about is being a competitor. Okay, the standard was you had to meet a power factor. Back then it was, I don't know, 180 or something like that. So whatever it, say you shot 2/3 grain hardball like you're one of those guys who drinks the Kool-Aid that's bigger better. Okay. But the bottom line was, so I have to make the power factor, and let's say I have to shoot a 2/3 grain hardball load at 850 feet per second to make the power factor by putting an inch longer barrel. And they put this, Pockmeyer put those cuts in there in theory they had some porting effect. I don't really think they did, but what it is an inch longer barrel gave you more velocity, which meant he could download his ammo 50 feet per second to 800 feet per second, and he had now had an advantage, less recoil. We still made the power factor. And everybody caught, oh, we want a gun with a 6-inch barrel and ports cut in it. Well, people have always looked for an advantage, and they will, whether it's racing or shooting competition. Everybody wants to get at that little edge. So the problem with this gun is, if you said, I'm going to carry this gun, is how do you carry it? Because it's a lot longer. But like I said, you have to draw farther to get it out. So your draw speed is going to be compromised. Everything's a trade-off.
Sure.
And now, by the way, we're seeing this era where compensators are now starting to come back. Mostly 9mm, you know, because I don't know anybody that's building 45 comp guns right now, but everybody's 9mm. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But this was a standard in the day. Bill sold a ton of these things.
Right.
I mean, literally. I mean, their gunsmiths were probably building these as much as any other guns they were building. And back then, it was a 1911 building business purely, and they didn't have make their own guns. You sent them a Colt or whatever, and they converted to guns. So, piece of history, actually still quite effective.
Mm-hmm.
And again, compensator wise, if you look at Wilson Combat, fast forward to the 21st century, we've got a double stack, high cap pistol that is actually, this X9 family is actually an incredibly good design. Most importantly, Bill Wilson did something real smart. This is a Walther PPQ magazine. Proven mag, by the way, a modified Brother 92.
But yeah.
And he took a mag that is a proven mag, will work, and build a gun around it. And interestingly enough, we started brainstorming about this idea, Bill and I did, at the dining room table, making notes and what we want to learn. I remember saying, he was originally thinking about a grip safety, and I said, oh man, why would you put a grip safety?
Can't do that.
Get rid of that. And the other thing, I said, definitely make the trigger guard longer, because I live in a land where people wear gloves. You need more space with left hand. You'll see with this, you compare the.
Oh wow, yeah, I actually didn't know that. Oh wow, yeah.
That was a big deal. And then we talked about, for example, why would you put a bushing in a gun today? In a new gun, you don't need it. If you do it, with CNC now, you can consistently get the dimension. Back in this day, you had to fit each barrel to each slide, because Colt didn't hold their thumb. Exactly.
Well,
so yeah, cool gun. If you're a gun guy,
yeah,
and especially a 1911 guy like you just about have to
Oh, it's a must. I love it. It's up there, you know, in my collection. It's one of my top 5 favorite guns I own, and so I really enjoy it. And I'm glad you could shed some light on it because it's one of those guns that you don't see a lot of information on. I will say though, the Combat Auto book is like a giant advertisement for that gun.
Of course.
You know, which is
the moneymaker for them.
Right, which is funny. I think even some of the actual Colt team shooters were shooting these back in the day. Debbie, there was a chick that I saw.
I mean, I forget her name, but
yeah,
they were as long as you're shooting a Colt.
Yeah,
Colt was happy.
Yep, that's right.
Until Springfield Armory came along, Colt was the only show in town.
Right.
You know, and then Springfield Armory started to put a dent in their business. And the thing that Springfield Armory did is, where Colt was reluctant to change.
Oh, absolutely.
Springfield Armory was like, well, what we need to do to make the guns the way that people want them. And they started off with a kind of a base gun, but they evolved pretty quickly, and they hired Rob Latham.
Yeah, smart move for them.
Well, they called him the $1 Million Man. They hired him for a 10-year contract, $100,000 a year. And by the way, it paid off.
Back then.
And back then, that was huge.
Well, and the cool thing, too, when you look at Springfield Armory, when they came out, they were introducing guns like the PDP Defender Comp, which is a cutback slide carry comp gun. They had the Distinguished Comp Custom Shop gun, yep, which was, you know, their kind of race gun to compete with this. So they actually did what Colt didn't, which was, hey, instead of giving people a gun they got to send to Wilson Combat, we want to give them a gun that's how they, out of the box. So anyways, this is a really cool gun. I'm glad we got to talk about it. We got more stuff coming at you pretty soon. Actually, we're gonna have a whole slew of guns we're talking about, and so we will catch you next time. Remember, carry cocked and locked.
Stay safe.